I have always been a huge fan of horror movies. This story is out of that time when the movie Paranormal Activities came to theaters. I went to watch the movie with two of my friends, James and Andy. Needless to say, we were thrilled after watching this movie. The concept of moving into a house and witnessing supernatural occurrences gave us an adrenaline rush. One evening, Andy and I went to James's house for a sleepover. We were chilling in James's room. James started to talk about some articles he read online that has claimed haunted houses do exist. I was sitting near his bedroom window and smoking when Andy said, "Chris, give me a drag."
Like a black
I passed the cigarette to him and said, "I have also read such articles. I wish we could visit a haunted house." Andy exhaled smoke out of the window and replied,
I can see it, Rick.
"Who says you can't?" and started smiling with mysterious eyes. James said in a surprised voice, "What do you mean?" Andy turned to us and said, "There is a house residing near Crystal Lake. It's a half an hour drive from our town. People say that that house is haunted." James scratches his head and said, "Oh, you mean the Millard house?" I was clueless about this place completely, so I interrupted their conversation and said, "What house? Who's Millard?" James immediately got up from his bed and switched on his laptop. He surfed a few minutes and then said, "Yes, I was right. I read about this place. This house has a very horrifying history. Years ago, a man named William Millard lived there. He had a beautiful daughter, but that man was very strict and hardly let his daughter go out of the house. One day, he found out that the daughter was having an affair with their mailman. Mr. Millard got so angry that he lost his senses and pushed his daughter down the stairs. The daughter broke her back and could never walk like a human. Some say she crawled around the entire house at night like a dog. A week after this incident, passerbys called the cops complaining about a rancid smell coming from the house. As the cops entered the house, they discovered Mr. Millard's dead body near the stairs. He fell from the stairs and broke his neck. They found the daughter dead on her bed. I smirked and said, "What is so horrifying about that? The daughter probably took revenge on her father and later killed herself too." James looked at me with wide eyes and said, "As per the forensic report, the daughter died on 20th March, 1 p.m. in the afternoon on her bed, and Mr. Millard's time of death, pronounced 20th March, 1 a.m. at night. There was no sign of forced entry into the house. So yeah, people say the daughter's angry spirit killed her father." Andy said,
And you would go, "Why?
"Want to check out the place?" What say?
No.
James and I agreed to him, and we decided to go to Crystal Lake that weekend. I took my brother's car, and we left one Saturday evening. We wanted to feel the chills, so we chose to go after dark. I will forever regret this decision. Andy was right. It took us 30 to 35 minutes to reach there. The place Crystal Lake was an appropriate name, as the lake water was reflecting the entire starry night sky like a mirror. We parked our car near the lake.
Really?
It was a full moon night. The moonlight was flooding all over the place. The Millard house was standing like a giant on the other side of the lake. We didn't know that to reach the house, we have to cross the lake. Luckily, there were two small boats tied to the wooden platform of the lake. The ambiance around us was looking very spooky. Due to the vast open area, we could hear each and every sound.
Jason killed him.
The crickets chirping, the hollow wind passing by, and the churning water waves in the lake. James locked his car, and we got onto a boat. James and I started to paddle the boat while Andy fixed our flashlight. When we reached the opposite side of the lake, the house appeared way scarier than it did before. The broken windows were hanging as if they would fall at any moment. Weeds have grown all over the walls of the house. There was no sign of light coming from the house. We stepped on the house porch and pushed the main door. The main door opened with a loud creaking noise, signifying no human being entered here in decades. Andy flashed the light inside, and almost a colony of bats flew overhead, scaring the shit out of us. I said in a tensed voice, "Guys, are you all sure about this?" Andy replied, "Come on now, stop being a kid." James and Andy got inside, and I had to follow them. The entire house was in darkness. The only source of light was our one flashlight and the pale moonlight coming out of the broken window. We realized we are standing in the living room of the house and noticed a huge stairway lying in the middle of the room. James said in a low voice, "This is the stairway from where Mr. Millard fell down and died, breaking his neck." Cobwebs and dust were surrounding all over the house. I even saw a few bats hanging from the ceiling of the house. Andy flashed his light towards the left corner and said in a mocking voice, "Check this out, guys." We saw a painting hanging on the left corner wall. We went there and saw an oil painting featuring an old man with an angry-looking face standing near a fireplace. And just beside him, a girl aged around 17 to 18 years sitting on a chair. "This must be Mr. Millard and his daughter," said James. The girl was actually good-looking, but even in that picture, one could easily tell how extremely sad she was. It felt like tears will roll down her eyes any minute. Andy said in a sarcastic tone, "If I have her, I would have to keep her away too." I was getting really annoyed with his disgusting jokes. I said, "You should not say things like that. It's very disrespectful, man. Think about all the tortures she has gone through." Andy shrugged his shoulders and replied, "Yeah, whatever," and started to walk towards the staircase. James said, "Where are you going?" He replied, "Let's see the daughter's room. We have come so far not to roam around the house for a while. It's anyways obvious there's no ghost here." James started following them too. I turned around to go with them too, but just then, I felt like I heard a giggling sound. I stopped and said, "Guys, did you hear that?"
I'm leaving my friends. I'm sorry. I'm not.
James said, "Hear what, Chris?" Before I could tell what I just experienced, I heard Andy say from upstairs, "Come on now, enough with your girly tantrums." I felt very insulted and decided not to speak a word to Andy. As I walked upstairs, I heard the wooden stairs creaking with the pressure of my feet. After reaching upstairs, I saw James and Andy standing in front of a closed door. I asked, "What's wrong?" James replied while turning the doorknob, "I think the door is jammed. It's not opening." Andy told, "Hold the light. Let me try." Andy tried really hard but couldn't open the door. We were standing there in front of the closed door and thinking about what to do next just when we heard a giggling sound. Everyone got shocked by the sudden sound.
Time to go.
I said in a panicked voice, "James, I've heard this sound downstairs. I think we should leave now. We had enough, guys." Andy flashed the light all over, but we couldn't see anyone. Then he said in a curious voice, "Maybe the sound is coming from this room." I don't know if you will believe me or not, but suddenly, the doorknob clicked on its own and the door opened. We immediately looked at the room. It was an old, dusty room. There was a small, torn-out, dirty bed lying in the middle. The pale moonlight coming from the window made the room quite visible to our eyes. We were about to step into the room when we heard the giggling sound again. It was the sound of subdued laughter of a female voice. The hair at the back of my neck stood up. I said in a whispering voice, "Guys, let's go." Suddenly, James pointed out on the side of the bed facing the window and said in a scared voice, "What? What is that, Andy?" I felt as if a dog-like creature was sitting near the window, but it was too dark for us to see things clearly. Andy pointed the flashlight into that direction and our blood turned cold. There was a girl on the ground near the window. She was standing like a frog. She was facing the ground. For a moment, none of us could utter a single word. It was as if all of our hearts stopped the very moment and we can't move anymore. The girl lifted her face and the flashlight started to flicker. We couldn't see her face clearly due to the flickering, but then the light kept switching on and off for no reason. And with every flash of light, we could see the girl's vicious face with changing expression. With the first flash, we saw her sad face. With the second flash, we saw a huge ear-to-ear smile on her face. With the third flash, we saw her expressionless face with wide, white eyes as if she can see through us. We were so shocked that we almost forgot to run. Just then, the girl made the same spine-chilling giggle and started to crawl towards us vigorously like a hungry demon. We all finally got our senses back and started to run for our lives. James and I were in front and Andy was running behind us. James kept saying, "Run, run!" Andy was screaming like a 10-year-old saying, "Don't leave me here! Please! She is behind me!" We reached the main door and turned around for Andy. We saw Andy was almost halfway on the stairs and the girl was crawling behind him, following him like an animal. Somehow, we all managed to get out of the house and jumped on the boat. Andy dropped the flashlight on the lake in a fit of fear. James and I started paddling like maniacs. Andy was sitting on the boat, facing his back at the house. He got so freaked out that he kept saying, "I can still hear her evil laughter. Paddle faster, faster." James and I realized that he has gone into shock, because as far as our eyes went, there was no one in front of the house. James said in a low, panting voice, "Maybe she can't leave the house." I didn't say anything, just kept paddling. I still don't know how we managed to return home that night, but ever since this incident, news about any haunted place makes me sweat.
First of all, I wouldn't be going. First, there's two reasons why I wouldn't be going. They said it was an urban legend in the woods. Second, guess what that lake is called? It's called Crystal Lake. Nigga, that's Jason. Can't Crystal Lake. Crystal Lake. Oh, it just wouldn't be happening. Not today. Not ever. Story number 2.
My parents used to fight all the time. I was in high school back then. One day, I couldn't take it anymore and stormed out of the house. There was a small beach near our area. I often used to go for a walk there at night. The cool breeze coming from the sea calmed me down whenever I was under stress. At the beach stood an old abandoned house. Whenever I came to the beach, that house kind of attracted me, but I never went inside. That night, I was very upset. I had some stash with myself, so I thought to smoke inside that house as cops patrol the beach at night. It was a 2-storied wooden house. Saplings were growing on it. Though the door was locked, I found a broken window to get in. The window led to a small bedroom on the ground floor. There was a worn-out bed, a broken chair, and lots of dust and garbage lying on the floor. From that room stood a long corridor leading to a hall and stairs to the first-floor rooms. I have been on many camping trips and solo trips, so being alone in that old abandoned house didn't bother me at first. I grabbed a box lying in the corner of the room and sat on it by placing it near the window from where I entered the house. The wind was playing with my hair, and my troubled mind started to cool off eventually, when I heard someone's whispering voice. I was a bit high, so after looking around the room and finding nothing, I ignored it, thinking it a trick my mind played on me. The waves of the sea, accompanied by the moonlight, made the view from the window soothing and dreamy. Don't know how long I sat there like that, but my attention got shifted with a highly unexpected event when a whispering voice of a man approached my ears. "Can I have the lighter?" I immediately got up and turned towards the sound. I play basketball at school, so I am quite a healthy and strong-built teenager. I replied shockingly, "What the fuck?" and noticed an average height and skinny man standing in the middle of the room with an awkward smile. With my sudden gesture of defense, he too got scared, which I could tell from his face. He said again in that same low voice, sorry to bother you. Actually, I just found this abandoned house and thought to crash the night here." It was obvious to realize from his clothes that this man is probably a homeless guy. His face was pointing vividly that he is very weak and hasn't eaten for days. I said, "It's okay. I don't live here either. Just came to smoke. Here's my lighter," and handed him over the lighter. He replied with that same awkward smile, saying, "Thank you. I am Jeremy Carter." "And you are?" I replied in a disinterested voice. I'm Kevin. I live on the block nearby." The man gave me back my lighter and went to sit on the bed. He then said, "If you want to stay in this room tonight, I can leave the house. It won't be a problem." I looked at the sea once again and replied, "That won't be necessary. I will leave after some time." I asked him how we got in, to which he replied he climbed from the house from the backside and got in from the first-floor balcony. We started to talk as he seemed harmless. The man took the first drag of the cigarette and coughed a bit. I asked him, "This house has been vacant for a long time now. Even if you live here, no one will be bothered, I guess." The man laughed in a low but squeaky voice and said, "Seems like you don't know about the history of this house." A sense of curiosity appeared on my face. I asked, "What history?" The man exhaled clouds of smoke and said, "This house once belonged to an elderly married couple. The couple had no children of their own. People say this sense of emptiness created problems between them. The wife used to fight all the time. She became so bitter that the husband often spent the night outside the house. One night, it was raining really heavily. The husband came home after being really drunk. He called out his wife's name out loud. He was expecting a lot of hurtful rantings from his toxic wife, but this time, the house was in deep silence. No matter how many times he called her name, she didn't answer. He ran to the bedroom upstairs and found the wife's lifeless body hanging from the ceiling. Even though his wife made his life miserable, he still loved her. People say the husband also committed suicide in that same room." I smirked and said, "Well, every house possesses a history. It's awful to hear, but that happened a long time back. Why is that a problem now?" The man coughed in a low voice again and said, "People say the wife's spirit still haunts this place looking for her husband. I even heard footsteps on the stairs and hallway around midnight. That is why I only choose to spend the night at this house when I have nowhere else to go." The door of our room was open. My eyes went to the dark corridor ahead, and being honest, it gave me goosebumps. But then I said, "These are all made-up stories, and no offense, but you can hear many things when you get high." And I chuckled to lighten the mood. Breaking the uncomfortable silence of the room, I said, "How does the room upstairs look?" The man said, "Messy and unorganized, but in better condition than this one." I said, "I have never been upstairs. Actually, I entered this house today only." The man immediately got up and said in a panicked voice, "You should never go upstairs. She will never like it." Before I could ask further, the man rushed towards me and said in a freaked out tone, "Do you hear that?" The man standing really close to me kind of freaked me out too. I said in a broken voice, "What? Hear what?" The man then slowly turned his eyes towards the corridor and said, "She is coming! Listen to her footsteps!" I was about to push him away for making such stupid jokes, but before I could do so, all my senses stood up. I heard the sound of footsteps. I felt like someone is walking down the stairs. My ears couldn't believe what I was hearing.
Out the window.
I threw the cigarette out the window and stood up. The
You jumped out
footsteps
the
were
window.
coming close this
Throw
time.
the cigarette out the window.
The man grabbed my hand and said, "Come on, we must hide under the bed or she will... Come on!" I was already high and these sudden events were enough to shut down my rational senses. Without jumping out of the window, I don't know why I agreed with this unknown, out-of-mind stranger. The man crawled down under the bed, and I did the same too. I was lying there under the bed, and my heart was racing fast. The man was at my left. His eyes were wide and freaked out too. He gestured me to be absolutely quiet by putting his skinny, dirty finger on his lips. The sounds of footsteps were coming closer and closer each minute. I was feeling like my heart will come out of my mouth any time now. I could see the floor lying under the bed. My eyes stuck on the doorway, as I was expecting someone's entry any moment now. I was repeatedly telling my mind that it was all in my head, but the footsteps were so freaking real. But what happened next shut down all my guesses. A pair of feet wearing ladies' heels entered the room. I turned to the left and saw the man wasn't there. I thought to myself, bloody asshole, ran away leaving me in this haunted house? I was so distracted by the sound of the footsteps that I failed to notice when the man secretly sneaked out of this room. The pair of feet started to walk around the room. I had no courage left to get out and face a dead woman's ghost, so I kept quiet. The feet went to the window and then turned towards the doorway. It was about to walk out, and I felt relieved, thinking once it does, I will get the hell out of here forever. But right at the doorstep, those feet stopped. Now, they turned towards the bed, and a woman's voice came to my ear. "I can see you." My face turned pale. Drops of sweat crowded my forehead. I started panting heavily as those feet were coming towards the bed now. I closed my eyes when it reached in front of me. I knew this woman is going to peek under the bed now and might kill me. I was just hoping to get out of here alive, just when I heard the woman's voice again, and it said, "Who the hell are you?" I opened my eyes, all gasping and panting, and saw an old woman looking at me with shocking eyes. She told me in a coarse voice, "Come out right now. You stupid teenagers have turned my house into a smoking zone. Come out!" I slowly crawled out of the bed and stood there with a clueless face. I explained the entire situation to the woman and said how a man named Jeremy Carter spooked me with a fucking stupid ghost story. The woman got even angrier and said, "Is this some kind of a joke? Are you trying to be smart with me?" I couldn't understand her words, so I kept staring at her blankly. She said in a loud voice, "My husband, Jeremy Carter, has been dead for a really long time now.